It's my great honor today to welcome Mary Meyer, who is the Executive Director of the Bainbridge Island Parks Foundation, and Terry Landy, who is the Executive Director of the Bainbridge Island Metropolitan Park District. And so we are here today to talk primarily about the new acquisition that the park has for the 10-acre parcel that is behind Sportsman's Club Road and the park there, that is going to be designated for as enlarging the dog park and as a mountain bike park. So we are very thrilled not only to get this donation, but also to be able to hear about it. So welcome and thank you for joining us today.
Hi, thank you so much, Janet. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes, that's really
wonderful. Wonderful. So yes, we're here to share this exciting news, which you may have heard about in the press, about the High School Road acquisition, which is adjacent to Strawberry Hill Park. And with that, I am going to start out by introducing Terry Landy and letting Terry introduce himself. Go ahead.
Certainly. As she said, I'm Terry Landy. I'm the Executive Director for the Bainbridge Island Metropolitan Park and Recreation District. We are a taxing agency on the island. We're one of, I think, 5 taxing agencies on the island. We're separate from the Park Foundation. You pay property taxes to the Park District. I've been on the island and in this working for the Park District for finishing up my 18th year. I came here from Springfield, Eugene, Oregon, where I worked for another park district called Willamette Lane Park and Recreation District, and worked there for 20 years at that park district. And then before that, I was in a youth sports organization, and I moved down there from Northern Idaho. So I've lived in Northern Idaho, central coastal type Eugene, Oregon, and on Bainbridge for the last 46 years, somewhere in that area. Happy to be here.
Thanks, Terry. And my name is Mary Meyer. I'm the Executive Director of the Bainbridge Island Parks Foundation as of April 5th. So it's been quite a whirlwind, and I am taking over the role from Barb Trafton, who some of you may know, and Barb is still with the Parks Foundation. She's moved to a projects director role as she looks to reduce her hours. And I've been on the island for 7 years. I came here with my spouse, who was at the time a Coast Guard officer, and we've since settled here. Our kids are, I have a daughter at UW and a son at the high school. And prior to this, I was at Islandwood for about 6 years as the community education manager there. And prior to that, I worked for the National Audubon, as well as various small nature centers around, one in Connecticut. And prior to that, I was a park ranger down in Tennessee. So I love parks, they're in my blood, and I'm just thrilled to be in this role. And the Parks Foundation is the nonprofit fundraising organization that supports the Park District. And we support the Park District on acquisitions, parks projects, things like the new pickleball courts. And we've since been working on trail acquisitions as well. And sometimes our trail acquisitions are connecting city property with district property through private acquisitions, private trail easements. And so we do a lot more than just in parks. I like to think that we help connect people to parks and connect people to each other. So it's nice to be here today. I think we wanted to kind of share how our two organizations are different and how they work together. I want to emphasize first that we have such a strong partnership, the Park District and the Parks Foundation. And again, the Parks Foundation is the nonprofit fundraising entity that supports the district. Terry, did you want to say anything else about?
I would just add how strong the partnership is. The Park Foundation allows the Park District to do so many more things than it would have done without the foundation, and it's just been improved constantly over the last 7 years, and I think it's really hitting its stride and peaking right now. It's doing a great job. between the two agencies.
I agree. You know, the foundation can access maybe some grants that aren't, the district isn't eligible for. We can work with a lot of small community organizations. An example is maybe a neighborhood foundation, like the Friends of Blakely Harbor. And we can really kind of do all of that relational work that takes a lot of time, and we can build that support for certain neighborhoods and user groups and so forth.
I would add that this what we're going to be talking about is a perfect example of what the two agencies can do for each other and provide to the community. The end result, it's a great benefit to the community.
Mary, may I please ask, is the foundation a 501c3? So any donation that people make, there may be a tax advantage for them?
Absolutely. Yes, we are a 501c3, and it is a tax benefit to donate to us. And you'll see when we share about how this all happened, why it was beneficial for the donor to give the money to us to acquire the property that we're going to be talking about today. Thank you, Janet.
Yeah.
So let's talk about High School Road. I'm going to turn it over to Terry for this.
Just on the northern portion of Strawberry Hill Park, up where the upper softball fields are at, we've always kind of admired this piece of property that was adjacent to that park. It's 10 acres. It's also just above the Philippine American Hall and its land, and it was owned by the Hayashida family, a long time huge legacy family here on the island with strawberries, dating back to the early 1920s. What happened was as I said, this is a piece of property we've been aware of for quite some time, and we've actually met with the family a number of times over the last 10, 15 years about what their thoughts were in the future, and they had hoped to sell it at some point. We asked them to keep us apprised of that, and what it ended up happening is that they put it on the market, and within a half an hour of it being on the market, I got two phone calls from board members, Park District board members, saying, "Have you heard about this?" And it was like, "Nope, not yet, but now I'm aware of it." And so I called Mary and said, or had somebody here at the agency call Mary and say, "Hey, Mary, are you aware of this piece of property available? Can we take a joint look at this and see if there's something we can do?" And then a couple hours later, I received a phone call from the listing agent, and he asked us if we were interested in the property, and I said, "Of course we are. We'd love to figure out a way to purchase this property. Hopefully we can do something before somebody else snatches it up." And it was listed as 4 houses could be built on it, 2.5 acres per house. And we were just, I don't want to say scared to death, but I will say scared to death that somebody would buy it and put 4 houses there. And it's a prime piece of real estate, like I say, that would be perfect as an addition to this park. And so in talking to the listing agent, I said, we're working with the foundation to see if we can find a way for the Park District and the foundation to purchase it. And he said, "Well, I'll keep my eyes and ears open too." And so then we turned it over well, then I got a phone call that afternoon, actually, or it was that afternoon, from a person on the island who asked some questions of us and said, "Are you interested in that park as an addition to the park? And would that solve a problem with the Grand Forest North and bicycles?" And also the person said, "I think the dog park there is too small. I'd like to see that made larger. So how about if I buy it and give it to you?" And when I recovered and picked my mouth up off the floor, I stuttered and stammered for a few minutes and said, "Well, that would be absolutely wonderful." And we had a longer conversation, and I said, "Well, do you mind if I have Mary give you a call and discuss this with you? Because probably working with the foundation would be beneficial for both of us and probably be the most expedient way of having this happen." So I had this person call Mary, and Mary then got involved. Thank God.
Yeah, and prior to that amazing call from the donor, we were working to see how we could make this happen. So we needed to find out, gosh, could we potentially launch a campaign to buy $1 million property? And how are we going to compete in this market to get it? One of our board members is a realtor, and he has a new phrase for this market, and it's if you have to sleep on it, you won't sleep in it. It's all cash offers, that it's going so much over asking price, it's just impossible to compete. So we were thinking, not only how are we going to compete with making an offer, but how are we going to then fundraise for the property? But we were willing to do it. We were on our toes, we were doing the work. We just didn't have to. We didn't have to get there. So even with this call from the donor, though, we had to figure out how to make a competitive offer. And thank goodness we had a lot of support from the district, from all of our donors, from our board of directors, who's so knowledgeable, and also an attorney, Bill Ransom, who's a real estate attorney, helped us as well. But more than anything, we had a lot of help from the listing agent, because they were interested in making this happen for the community. So that's some good news. So next, the story of how it happened. Terry got the donor call, and I connected with the donor afterwards. We talked a little bit and decided that it would be best for the donor to give us the cash donation, the $1 million, and then we would make the purchase, or attempt to make a competitive purchase offer. And so we did, and the listing agent was also willing to act as the buyer agent, and that was really helpful. You know, there's disclosures you have to do with that. They have the listing agent is Arthur Mortel and George Syverson, and so George represented us as Arthur was representing the Hayashida family. And they very generously reduced their commission on this in order for us to save a little money and make this happen quickly. And we were able to make a full priced, all cash offer, closing in 2 weeks. And the Hayashida family accepted our offer. And when we created the purchase offer, we put in there that we would like to assign the district to close on it. So when we closed, the foundation never actually held the property. So we received the money from the donor, we paid the money to the escrow company at closing, and immediately Terry signed, and the district and the people of Bainbridge Island took the title and property. And that happened Thursday. So this all happened in 2 weeks, a little over 2 weeks, would you say, Terry?
Yes.
And I think that shows the value of the Parks Foundation and the relationship with the district. They would never have been able to turn this around so quickly. And cooperating with the donor, with the buyer's agent, with the district, with some pro bono experts in the area, everyone came together for the community to make this happen. So I wanted to share a little bit more with you about the property. And I think, Terry, if you want to talk more about this, since you were so familiar with the property, you're looking at High School Road, Strawberry Hill Park right here, and you'll see one of the ball fields, but you'll see the property behind there. And Terry, take it from here.
But yeah, look, that's looking to the west, across the softball fields, and you see the tall trees there. That's basically where the park, or the current park, is at. It's 10 acres. It kind of surrounds the dog park. Let's see what else we got. This is on the other side of the fence now. We're in the property that was just purchased. Has a fairly newer growth forest in it. Needs a lot of, there's a lot of things we can do with this property besides the donor wanted to see it go towards the mountain bike issue and towards an increased size in the dog park. So we're going to increase the size of the dog park by probably double. go from 2.8 acres to probably close to 6 acres of dog park, which will be wonderful. Then we'll also have a series of mountain bike trails going down the hill. But one of the other things we're going to do is do some reforestation plans on this. There's a lot of, because it's a monoculture forest, which means it was all planted at the same time. All the trees are basically the same age, the same height, the same kind of crowding each other in certain places. And there's a lot of dead limbs on the lower end of it, which then fall to the ground, as you can see. We'll do a lot of, we're thinking we'll do a lot of cleanup there and take down a lot of the lower limbs that are hanging, that are just kind of the dead head limbs on the trees. We're going to move a lot of the, if you've been to the dog park, what happens at a dog park is most of the ground cover gets destroyed from the dogs running around. So what we'll probably do is move all the ferns and those kinds of native growth things that are on the ground, where we're going to increase the size of the dog park and move them over to some areas. And we're going to do some reforestation plans where we're going to blend the bike trails into the forest and into the underbrush, and kind of match them up so that there's a little bit of both, and use it as coverage and also as breakup. So you don't see the dog park from certain areas, you don't see the mountain bikers from different areas, and kind of clean up the area and do some more replanting of natives as understory. There's a lot of dead trees in there, small dead trees. We'll take out a lot of those smaller dead trees because they're actually dangerous. Somebody could knock one over and land on somebody. That's looking into the dog park. And if you look at the foreground there, that's kind of green with the ferns and things. And if you look over the fence, there is not much of that left. So we'll move that fence probably towards this photo, the photographer here, but we're going to transplant a lot of all the ferns and things out of the way so that we'll save all those. Like I say, it'll make it really a nice dog park.
Terry, there's a nice, opposed to some other spots on the island, this property, from what I understand, has a nice slope. It slopes west, which is, slopes are really nice for mountain bikers, from what I understand. So in addition to this being a younger forest, not very ecologically sensitive, there are already established mountain bike trails in there, but there's a nice slope, and that type of terrain is really ideal for mountain bikers, from what I understand. Is that correct?
Yeah, Mary, maybe you could go back to that slide that shows some of the trails. That one there. That's a volunteer mountain bike trail that was built there a number of years ago, 15, 20 years ago, by some local kids or some kids getting together. And you can see the slope, how it turns left down the hill. But it's when you stand at the top of it, though, at the easternmost point of it, looking to the west, there's a really nice gradual slope downhill. And then it goes to a bench, and then it drops down again with two kind of gullies that come down parallel to each other. So there's some real nice topography that we can break up the park by using the topography and the trees to kind of break it up and isolate things away from each other. The neighbors are quite a ways away from it. We've met with most all the neighbors so far, and they've been real receptive to what we're doing. There's a couple of neighbors that have young kids who ride their bikes over there and are looking forward to this sort of thing. It's actually quite remarkable, the timing and the location and the type of property. It's quite the blessing to get this donated, and it's stunning the timing that happened with this piece of property, and the kind of the forward thinking that the donor had in arranging this is pretty remarkable.
So just a few, just to explain a little bit more about the donor intentions, and Terry touched on all of this, is this person was really interested in slowing development, and as Terry said, this will reduce, there was potentially 4 home sites, and that means 4 wells, and there's some important hydrology. That northwest corner, there's a little wetness there, and all that drains into Springbrook Creek, I believe, which is a potential salmon stream. So just being able to slow that type of drain from the water table and the hydrology there, and keep this in preservation, or at least conservation, is such a blessing. And then the increased acreage of the dog park was the donor's second interest. And then again, the fact that this could meet the needs of the community for mountain bike trails was the third. So just, I think we're just so full of gratitude. First of all, for this generous donor. And then again, Arthur Mortel and George Syverson with Real Logistics Sotheby's, they were so instrumental in making all of this happen. We had some pro bono work for the foundation from Bill Ransom, who's with the Winslow Law Group. And then all of the supporters of the Bainbridge Island Parks Foundation, when we're supported just generally in our work, it gives us it allows us to have the staff and resources to respond at the last minute like this. And you may have seen there was a lot in the paper about goats and the Sounder Olympic Trail the same week. While all those goats were here and while we were doing all of that work getting the Sounder Olympic Trail ready, this was all happening behind the scenes, and we had to have staff doing two things at once and two big things at once. But because we have the support of donors that give so generously to the Parks Foundation, we can make that happen and have staff and resources to respond. And the Parks District is such a outstanding organization to work with, and they have such talented staff. And so we're grateful for all the citizens that support the district, and thanking you for your interest in having us here today.
Thank you, Mary.
With that, we're happy to take questions.
Does anybody have a question they would like to ask Mary? Or maybe ask Terry? I have one question. When it comes to the design of the mountain biking paths, obviously it sounds as though prior use of them has already designated some of the pathways. Will you get somebody in to help design the path who is a mountain biker? I mean, I don't know anything about mountain biking, so that would be a good thing to do.
Yeah, the plan is that we're going to put out an RFQ process, which is request for proposals, request for input, and we'll end up hiring a firm who will help design that. So we will be hiring a firm who's experienced at doing this, because it's critical how you put bends in the trail and turns and corners and those kinds of things, so that it makes it as good as it can be. So the intent will be is to hire a company who specializes in bike trails, bike paths, to help us do that. We have some expertise on staff, but we want to have some higher level expertise also help us out.
Yes, I think that will be good, because just looking at the pictures, obviously there's quite a bit of lower limbing to do, because a lot of it looks at eye height, and that would be a little bit of a disaster.
Yeah, you don't want that at the bike height.
Yes. Yes, Winifred, you have a question. Would you please like to go ahead and answer?
Oh, thank you, Janet. My question is, did you allocate some of the money that you got to help fund some of these operational type activities, or do you think that the Park District is going to be able to absorb these additional operational requirements like clearing and replanting and maintenance, I'm thinking of, with the existing budget that you have?
Kind of a two-part question. Mary, you may want to handle, you have money set aside from a donor, if I recall. I'll let you speak to that, and then I'll talk more of the general terms of the Park District budget.
Yeah, the donor gave a little bit extra funding. Not much, but rounded up the donation specifically for any interpretive signage or signage for the Hayashida family, because the Hayashida family was such an important part of our island history. I think a lot of you know that iconic photograph of Fumiko Hayashida carrying the baby during the internment, the removal, and telling that story and being able to share that family history, that large parcel of that strawberry farm, and how that agricultural history informs our forests as we see them today in parkland, I think is a really interesting story to tell. So there's a little bit of money for that. The foundation tries to help as much as possible with supporting the parks in the trails crew, in Student Conservation Corps, donations for Student Conservation Corps and Summer Trails crew. And
Jay Abbott.
I'm sorry?
The Jay Abbott.
Oh yeah, well, the specific for the not for the forestry, but for the actual building of the mountain biking, we have a memorial fund for Jay Abbott, and we've been holding the funds for this until there's been an appropriate site for the mountain biking. But Jay was one of the coaches at Gear Grinders who passed away in a tragic accident, and he to honor him, there's a fund, and some of it has been used for sailing and coaching, to support coaches and sailing and so forth, but some has been for mountain biking. So we have that funds, and we're ready to give it to the district to help develop this course.
Great.
And then as far as the bigger question goes, the park district, we're in a position right now where we're on our 13th year of a 2008 budget. So for the last 13 years, we've been on the same budget pretty much. And what we're doing this summer is we're going out for a lid lift to kind of go back to reestablish what the 75 cents a thousand, basically. What we found is over the last 13 years, we've doubled the size of all of our finished parks. We've increased the parks by about 400 acres. We've taken on Seabold Hall, a number of other halls, a number of other projects, the Parade Grounds Hall, the
Fort
Bakery
Ward.
Building.
Yeah.
We've taken on those 2 state parks, Fay Bainbridge, Fort Ward, just a whole lot of things the last 13 years. The interesting part to that is that our budget hasn't grown, and we have the exact same number of staff as we had 13 years ago. We have 42 full-time staff 13 years ago, and today we have 42 full-time staff. Well, for us to go forward and continue to grow like we've been growing, we have to reset our lid lift, our property tax rate. So we're going to be asking the community for that support this summer. In late July, early August, we have a lid lift that goes out for a vote in hopes of increasing. We need, as examples, we need a forester on staff that we can work with, who can look at a forest like this and say, here's what we need to do, rather than paying an outsider to come in and do it. We're the largest owner of forested land on the island. We need a forester to go out and evaluate, whether it be GASM or the Grand Forest, and determine what kind of things we need to make sure that we reduce the fire loads, reduce the opportunity for fires, reduce the opportunity for trees falling, because most all these trees on the island were planted about the same time period in those areas, and there's some issues with that. They're getting older. Some of them are dying, and they become dangerous. But the worry is if you cut down a tree, people get upset. So we need a plan that shows that was important to do. We've doubled the size of the miles of trails we had. In 2008, we had 20 miles of trails. Today we have over 40 miles of trails.
Wow.
We still have one person managing 40 miles of trails. So we need to increase our help on that, because our trails we've never seen this kind of use.
Oh, I can imagine.
Yeah.
During the pandemic, everybody was depending on the trails. I mean,
I think
your star shone very brightly in people's eyes, because we love the Park District. I mean,
thank you.
So
Thank you
important
so
during
much.
the pandemic.
And I think what we found is a lot of people found the Park District and learned about the trail system and the bikes and all the different activities and things, and they're not backing off. They're staying with it. They're still not visiting.
Yeah.
So we need to maintain those better than we are. We're not doing as good a job as that we believe we should. So that's part of this whole lid lift thing. So the answer to your question is right now, we really don't have enough money to be taking care of them at the level we need to take care of them, especially going into the future. And what we're hoping to do this summer is have that taken care of, so we can do the next 13 or 20 years, whatever it is, and maintain and take on more stuff, because we have the city, the land trust, the park foundation are all working on trail connectors. And the end result is the park district is going to be the manager of those trails, those connectors. And we just don't have enough staff to take care of. We don't have the resource we're short on right now is human power.
Mhm. Great.
Terry, I
thank you.
wanted to emphasize that lid lift is restoring the 75 cents per $1,000 rate that the voters approved in 2008, but has dwindled over the years and is currently at 59 cents per 1,000. And so it's not a new levy, it's just taking it back to where it needs to be because of another law that kind of keeps the rate at less than 1% so it doesn't match inflation. So it feels a lot better to ask for something that's just bringing it back to what the voters approved in the first place.
So
Thanks, Mary.
by doing that, you're not going to hit the 1% raise that is in the law at the moment. I'm not very certain how that works.
The law right now, what we've been surviving on the last 13 years is that we set the rate at 75 cents, and then each year after that, you can increase your budget by 1% and by new growth. New growth being new houses being built,
Yeah.
new developments, that sort of thing. So that's the only increases. Prior to that, you were increasing by a much greater amount than that.
Yeah.
So that's limited. Well, the cost of living and the cost of all the costs of everything, people, supplies, all that have gone up by way more than 1%, 2% per year. And so we've been falling behind on that over the course of the last 13 years. And now we've hit this law where we'd like to reset it back to the original rate of 75 cents a thousand.
Well, thank you for explaining that.
Certainly.
Can I ask a couple of specific questions? Can you tell us what the at Battle Point Park, the pond restoration, what is the present situation with that?
The outfall has failed on the north end of the pond that goes underneath the walking trail, and it failed around the outfall. So over the course of 50 years, the hydrology finally just ate away at the bank underneath, and it caused it to fail. Now, what's interesting about that is that pond is regulated by the state, not by local, not by us. So because it holds back X amount of water, it's regulated by the state. So we have to get state engineer, state permits, county permits, and city permits to do any work on it. And it's probably costing us $40,000 to $50,000 just to get all that put together so that we can then come up with a solution to fix it. In the meantime, we aren't allowed to do any work on it. We got lucky in that it kind of self-stopped itself. I think what happened is the metal pipe crunched in and it stopped the water from outflowing completely. But that's just a luck of the draw type of a saving. But we're working on it. We hope to have a remedy and a solution in place by the end of the summer.
Yeah.
And what we're also trying to do is to not draw down the pond so it's completely empty and we lose all the fish and things that are still in there. And but what's been dangerous and what's been worrisome about it is we've had people try to walk across the pond.
Oh.
And two things to that. One is that you'll sink up to your waist. And we've had to pull two people out of the pond, out of the mud. And the second thing is to keep in mind of what the bottom is made out of. It's mostly goose poop. I mean, we've all seen ducks and geese and all that stuff there. So the bottom is also made up of that kind of stuff, and that's not good for you. So we've had to try to keep people away from it, at the same time allow the enjoyment of the pond, and trying to push the state and the county to hurry up and get us a permit.
Well, thank you.
It's been real challenging.
That just seems so silly that people think they can walk on water or turn it into a.
That's just where some things start. What was the other? Did you have another question?
Yes, I have one more question. And switching, this is the other side of the island. Just
Sure.
because I live in Winslow, I take a path down to Hawley Park, and once a year, one of the neighbors seems to cut the path off to regrow and reseed the grass, when it would make much more sense to put down little wooden pavers or something so that you didn't need grass there and it wouldn't get muddy. Can you comment on that, please?
That's an interesting one, because Holly Cove is owned by the Park District, but the trail that gets to Holly Cove from downtown, from Winslow, is not owned by the Park District. It's owned by a combination of private individuals and the ferry system. So there are a number of those that aren't owned by the Park District. So we don't have any control, and it's just been through the goodness of the people's hearts that live along there. Some of those places that allow people to walk through there, but there is no, we don't even have an easement for a lot of that stuff, and then a portion of it's owned by the ferry system. So it's the part that isn't owned by the Park District, I'm afraid, that's trying to grow grass and that sort of thing.
Well, thank you. I didn't realize. I mean, you don't realize that. You just assume that it's on the way to Hawley Park, that you absolutely got to own it.
Yeah, no, that's not the way it is on that one. We're trying to work with the neighbors and to work out some agreements and things.
Thank you. Yes, because one of the best things the Park District did was, years ago, you asked for the $4 million for park facilities and growth of parks on Bainbridge, and that was a very good investment for everybody on Bainbridge.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
I presume all that money has been spent by now.
Yes. Yes. I think, are you referring to the money that was going towards purchasing properties?
Yes.
That was done by the city, actually. That was a city bond in the year 2000, and about 2000. It was just about 3 years before I got here. And they actually passed one for about $8 million. And it actually ended up purchasing about $14 million of properties. Like Rockaway Beach Park.
Oh, yeah.
Purchased with that. But the city was in charge of that. I think Andy Marin was actually the chairman of that committee. And when I got here, I worked on the committee for a while. So that was the Park District back then wasn't allowed to ask for that much money. So the city did it, and then we worked together. Since then, we've changed our status, and we're able to do that now ourselves.
Yeah. So what is the biggest thing that the foundation or the Park District would like to ask, apart from the levy that is going out this summer, that the residents of Bainbridge Island can do to help you?
Mary, do you want to?
Yeah, I guess aside from the levy, I think supporting the foundation this year in unrestricted donations allows us to meet our goals for our foundation. And we're ready to launch a big trails campaign in 2022. We're really excited about. So all of that work on identifying connections, working with private landowners to get easements, all the permit work, that takes a lot of staff hours and time. And we're hoping to be adding more miles of trails in the coming years, and we want to launch that campaign, but we want to make sure that our foundation is in a really solid financial state, and we've met our goals this year before we launch that campaign. So I think supporting the foundation, getting involved, either volunteer opportunities with us or the district, I think is another great way to get involved and support us.
One of the things that really helped during this pandemic was the publication of a book called 30 Walks or 30 Trails on Bainbridge. And I can say I've done every one of them, because it was a real bonus and benefit, and to see for everybody to see all the trails on Bainbridge, because if you live on the south end, you don't know all the trails on the north end. So that book in itself has been a real benefit for publicity for you to do that in the future, I think.
Yeah, the Charette family, Dave Charette is actually on our Trails Committee and our Board of Directors, and has been a huge help and resource for our trail efforts.
Yes. So I was lucky enough, I've been shown how to go through Lost Valley. Is Lost Valley one of the areas in which you hope to promote and widen the trail system there.
Absolutely. That's our one of our main trail connectors we're working on
Yeah.
in the coming year. Terry, you have anything to add about Lost Valley?
No, that's Lost Valley is one of those things that we've had our eye on.
Yeah.
I think that's another thing that to ask citizens what they could do is to be aware of where there's trails that don't have easements on them, and work with the Park Foundation and the Park District to turn those over to us so that we can make them an official connector. The example, like what you said about Holly Cove trails, those little trails that lead down there.
Yeah.
If you know somebody that has a piece of property in between two things that you want to connect, that we could get an easement across, those are the kinds of things we're working on.
Well, thank you. Yeah. So are you going to have, I noticed one of the publicity is that you're wanting to clear from the new property, the new 10 acres that's behind Strawberry Hill Park. You would like to start cleaning invasive weeds this year. Will you be having, I don't know if that's you or Mary, will be having work parties to do that?
Yes, it's both of us. And it's in a combination. Oftentimes what it is the Park Foundation provides us the funding to hire a group of individuals to come in and do clearing, invasive species removal, those kinds of things. Or we have a volunteer coordinator who works with Mary and her crew to do volunteer gatherings to work on trails or different parks and invasive species removal.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you. Are there any more questions if anybody would like to ask?
If the question isn't out there, I'll answer it. But Kids Up should be open, hopefully, when we get to August. The new Kids Up playground at a Battle Point.
Oh yes, it's growing.
It's growing, and the main thing that's left to do is the poured in place soft landing areas, which is a huge area, and that should be done in middle of June to middle of July. It takes a long time to pour it and cure it and then pour some more stuff on it. But that should hopefully be open here midsummer or 1st of August.
Yes, because I've been noticing it growing.
Yes.
And I bet the little ones can't wait to get on it because it looks much more interesting than what used to be there.
Unbelievable location, unbelievable playground. And if you haven't played pickleball, you all should go out and play pickleball.
Yes, and the beautiful tennis courts there too. Yes, there's a lot going on there, and now the Park District has started its soccer camps, and it's wonderful to see people running around, particularly the small ones, learning how to play soccer.
It's amazing. We may have had our biggest summer registration ever this summer, even coming out of the COVID-19. People have been feeling cooped up, and now that we're getting relaxed requirements, I think it may be the biggest summer we've had for registration and programs and camps and things.
Well, that's good news.
It's very good news. Nothing but good news here at the Park District and the Park Foundation. It's all good news.
Yeah,
so I really thank you today for joining us and explaining what this wonderful donation is going to be able to do to enlarge the parks and the life of people on Bainbridge. So I really appreciate what you do.